Great. So I will, having called the meeting to order, I'm going to go through a roll call. So for the Department of Education,
I present Ken Kakisak with Department of Education.
Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Aloha.
There you are. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you for having me.
Very much. Thank you. For the hero.
Stephen Goldsmith.
Thank you, Steve. For the Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation.
Christine.
For the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Okay. For the Hawaii Economic Development. For Jackie, are you on? I see.
Aloha,
Yeah.
I'm here.
Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate it. For the Oahu Economic Development Board, Ken, are you on? Ken Oahu, our representative of the Oahu one for the Hawaii Economic Development Board, Jackie Kaina. And for the Maui Economic Development Board.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry I was late.
No, Leslie, you weren't there. For the County of Hawaii Planning Department.
Jeff Darrow, and with me is Deputy Director Michelle.
Welcome.
Thank you for inviting us.
And for the City and County of Honolulu.
Hi, Tina Wong. I'm the Chief Planner for the Planning Division at DEEP.
And for the County of Hawaii.
Kyle.
And for the County of Maui.
Hey, lifetime, I was like,
Yeah. Okay. And do we have any legislative representatives on the line? Do you see anything? Thank you, Representative Poipoi. Welcome.
Aloha, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, seriously, on behalf of Speaker Nakamura. Okay. Nick Corson, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, aloha, everyone. Yep, I'm the Chief of Staff for Speaker Nakamura. She just was taking an interest. She appreciated the invitation, but her daughter is graduating today.
I'm excited. Your daughter's graduating. Oh, that's exciting. Well, thank you for. Thank you for attending on her behalf. I appreciate that.
Someone from Finn just joined.
Okay, for the House Finance Chair, can you introduce yourself? Are they still there?
Jay Nakama.
Oh, yes. Jamie Nakama, are you there?
Yes, just monitoring the meeting.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate it. All right. Is there anyone I haven't called and hasn't had an opportunity to introduce themselves?
Hi, aloha. I'm sitting for nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Tracy Erker with Holomua Collective sitting in for Josh.
And Michelle, you kind of got it.
Hi, Michelle on Deputy Director of County of Hawaii.
Okay, our agenda for today is very simple. We're going to do presentation of the State Planning Act update. And we're going to start, you all have before you the slides. So if you want to follow along, we're going to put it up on the Zoom and our Zoom attendees. I think you can see the slides as well up on the.
We're going to screen share it right now.
So I'll go ahead. I'm going to start. I'm going to be followed by Leo Asuncion, our special guest, who is the former director of the Office of Planning and Development, and who initiated this process in 2018.
17.
And then following Leo, we will have. We have somebody who told me. Will be Claire McCreary, our staff coordinator. Claire, way back there. Here we go. And we'll also have Laura Pignano, who will outline the steps we're going to take. Okay, with your help. Let's go to the first slide. There's our agenda. We're gonna cover, the revisions that have been made to the act since it was first enacted, in 1978. We're going to cover, the administrative authority that, the act provides. We're going to look at the present day planning system, and then we're going to look at updating the state planning act phase 1, which Leo published. And then we're going to talk about the state planning act phase 2, which is the project we're now embarked on. And then we'll look at phase 2 milestones and next steps. Next slide. Okay, you get to see a picture of the original Hawaii state plan. Back then, we didn't have any digital stuff at all. And it was a paper document, and also it's in statute. And this was under Governor Ariyoshi. And I was around then, I was actually working for the governor's office. And this was a huge project. It was given to the planning division in the old Department of Planning and Economic Development, which worked very closely with Governor Ariyoshi, especially on infrastructure, where as the economy of Hawaii changed from plantation agriculture to the visitor industry, Governor Ariyoshi believed that there needed to be infrastructure to support that change, to support our new economy, to provide jobs for our residents. And this was part of that effort. It was also part to put guardrails on development. And I think you'll see that as we go through it. Let's see. So, it was signed into law in 1978 as an 100. Go ahead, next slide. We wonderful picture of Governor Ariyoshi about 100 years ago. And he was very thoughtful in this. Next slide. Okay. This was the Star Bulletin, trying to capture, how. Okay. So this was a significant event in Hawaii's history. So of course the media did cover it very well. The plan stemmed from an interest in defining the state's land use policy beyond the land use law of 1961 that created the state land use commission, and the environmental impact law of 1974, which created the Office of Environmental Quality Control, which now was transferred to this office as the environmental review. And Governor Ariyoshi, who signed the State Planning Act into law, considered it secondary importance only to the state constitution. Because he did a significant amount of community engagement to find out what residents wanted to see in their state. So let's see, next slide. Okay, we have a graphic. So this gives you a very quick visual inventory of the really detailed work they did to create the state plan. They did inventories, household surveys, technical studies, issued papers, they had policy council, public informational workshops, public hearings, additional meetings, and then a full review by the state legislature. So it was definitely not, one person indicated. This was a very broad reaching planning group. Okay, next slide. They looked at some of the trends and problems at the time. The population was changing dramatically. It's growing. The jet plane was allowing people to come here for much more affordable amounts than if you had to come on a cruise ship. And people were moving here. And the economy was shifting dramatically from agriculture to the visitor industry. And our physical environment was under pressure. Facility systems were not keeping up with the growth in population. And residents were concerned that their place in this community and the cultural values were under pressure. So this is a wonderful graphic that Jesse Suki created for the state planning, and we're going to be referring to this throughout this overview because part is that broad envelope, the outside aqua color, and it has the overall aims, goals, objectives, and policies. Part 3 has priority guidelines that have quite a bit of duplication with part 1. And again, they are goals and aspirations. And then part 2 is the state planning coordination and implementation. This is the framework that I think our planning directors and our state planning are all based on. So this is that's a really critical part of this. Next slide. So the theme, I think, is still valid, but obviously can be tweaked. Individual family self-sufficiency, social and economic mobility, community and social well-being. Let's take a temperature check. Does anybody disagree with those? Oh, there are probably things we could add to it. They're not bad. No, for almost 50 years ago. Okay, next slide. So here's where they get given a little bit of context. Oh, remember this is all in the 76 to 78. So strong biological protecting our physical environment, and protecting our families, individuals with a sense of community. Next one. This is a graphic that the original plan was displacing, but it does attempt to show you all how these all fit together. And you can see the cultural and social advancements at the top. It includes housing, education, public safety, social services, individual rights, health, culture, government, sharing, facility systems. This was infrastructure. Some of you may recall the governor put quite a bit of emphasis on through his capital improvement project budget in trying to bring our infrastructure up to support the changes in population. And then the economy, which underlies and makes the other two possible. And protects households. Well-being. And then population because it was changing. And we have state next slide. So then part 3, which is again priorities, economic, population growth, distribution, and land resources. Next slide. This comes from part two bills. And it is establish a statewide planning system to coordinate and guide all major state and county activities and to implement overall goals, objectives, policies, priorities. This is where the county general plans, state functional plans, and state programs all fit into this channel. And so the legislature did revise this chapter in 1986, and they did a 2-year review process trying to reflect the changes that had happened. And they based that on 2 public surveys instead of techniques. Next one. And so just to summarize it for you, they added policies to improve the business climate, all the research, education, and training programs to attract and develop activities of benefit to one. I think you see here some of the early efforts to diversify our economy. And that happens as the visitor industry was starting to be bigger than our plantation industry. And there was another recognition by this time, we've had the land use commission's boundary allotments of the urban agriculture and conservation lands with a little bit of rural place for about over 20 years. And there was a recognition, I think, that that with about 47% of the state lands in the state ag district, that there might, and not all of it good for agriculture, but maybe there should be the opportunity to use some of those lands for non-agricultural uses. And the legislature has responded to that by putting 23 different permissible uses in the section of chapter 205, the state land use law. And about at least 20 of them, maybe 19 of them, are non-agricultural. So they did, that's been followed up as a policy. Next slide. Okay, here's the update. Colorful. And again, it's in booklet form because at that point we were just starting to have plans. Didn't have nothing like we have now. Okay, next slide. Friends, right? I think all of you will recognize these. That have happened since 1986. Information technology and the internet emerging industries, the dire need for more affordable housing, the need to deal with really serious health disparities on families, and then of course climate change, which is going to continue to put pressure on the coastal zones, agricultural industry, all of our land-based and economic-based. And Don Chang and I have a role in that because we serve as co-chairs of the state climate commission. And then also sitting next to Don is Chris Liu, who is representing the state climate commission because he's the manager of our coastal zone programs. Okay, next slide.
Mary Alice,
Yes.
is there an opportunity to add diaspora to that
Yeah.
under social justice?
Yes, we can do that. Thanks for the input.
Model.
Which one would you put that on?
I'm thinking under social justice.
Okay. Thank you. Any others that we missed as we looked through this? We were working off of the phase 1 update report. So, and that was 2018. So there may be changes between 2018 and now that are not reflected in this slide. But we will have time to go ahead and make changes as we go forward. Let's move on to the next one. And we had some others. Strategic plan, the functional plans, 13 of them, originally. And we worked on them in the Office of State Planning, which had been created in 1975 Governor Leo the legislature. It was probably one of the first multi-disciplinary planning efforts across departments. Since then, the chapter has been amended to add transit-oriented development and Hawaii's 2050 sustainability. So let's move on. Here's the timeline for the change of administrative authority over the Hawaii State Plan. It started with a policy council in the old Department of Planning and Economic Development through the Planning Division. In 1986, they did that comprehensive division. And then in 1987, when Governor Hawaiʻi posed the Office of State Planning, one of the first things he did was ask the legislature to transfer the Planning Division out of the Department of Planning and Economic Development into the Office of State Planning in the Governor's Office. And throughout Governor Hawaiʻi's 8 years, the Office of State Planning was a key partner in some of Governor Hawaiʻi's initiatives. And then so the Policy Council was abolished. 1996, I know some of you remember this, Governor Cayetano had a AG's opinion March Bronster that said that the Office of the Governor could no longer or should not have had permanent programs attached to it, also the Lieutenant Governor's office. And the Office of Planning, State Planning was then transferred back to DVED as the Office of Planning in 1996. And then 2021, the legislature enrolled bills of the governor that comes Act 153, 2021, that changed our name, added sustainable development to us, and gave us and then in Act 152 gave us the environmental review. Next slide. Okay, so we do have some duties under the chapter. And one of them is providing systems to state agencies. And especially the functional plans and also the county plans and state plans. We do that depending on the capacity that we have, and we try our very best. Sometimes we don't have the capacity to do as much as we would like, but that is our charge. So, and you can look at it there in that slide, and you can see that it's quite extensive. I'd like to focus a little bit on the assess one down there, CIP proposals for consistency of the state planning. Originally, in the old planning division, in DPD, there was a capital purpose project grant. And because of that close relationship with Governor Asuncion, a lot of his infrastructure projects originated from DPD and the CIP branch. When the Office of State Planning was created, the CIP branch went to the NF because it was so integral part of the budget bill. And then in a reorg, when they had a big rift, the CIP branch was abolished, and now the budget analysts have that job. it, it's quite a lot of work, you know. But it's no longer the offices. So. Let's move on. Oh, yes, my favorite slide. The Office of Planning and Sustainable Development has a number of chapters that we charges under and duties to, and so of course, we support the state and county's position, state's position officially to the Land Use Commission on land use boundary amendment petitions. So for that, our planning land use division surveys all the county agencies and the state agencies and ask them for comments on petitions. Chapter 205A, which Leo here is the manager of, works with all 4 counties under Chapter 205A on coastal zone management. It's a network program in partnership with the counties. The counties and Chapter 225M is our enabling statute. Chapter 225P is the state's climate change and mitigation. Chapter has several different sections, one of which is the state's climate change. Chapter 226, that's what this project is about. Chapter 341 created the Environmental Advisory Council, and chapter 343 governs environmental for all projects that use state and county land, state and county funds, or one of the special triggers included in that chapter. Usually they're ones that are really controversial. Okay, fine. There we go. This, I think, is this new, Leo? It's not yet. Not yet. Oh, we're gonna give you a break at some point, I promise. This is another way of looking at the planning system created by Chapter 226. So you have on the left the state functional plans, the county general plans, county sustainability and development, and state program plans. You also have under Chapter 226 the 2050 sustainability plan and the transformative development region. And then we've identified that there are a lot of other plans that departments and agencies and counties have created to meet special needs. They don't necessarily fall into 226, but to highlight. Counties and other agencies, state agencies have done an amazing job of developing plans with community engagement. Okay, next slide.
There's a handout on the virtual.
What's that?
There's a handout right there.
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Mary Alice, Jackie Hoover here. I'm looking at all these plans and so forth, and I'm a little bit concerned that the Comprehensive Economic Development Plan, which is utilized by legislators and other policymakers, including our county economic development groups in looking at infrastructure amongst other planning issues, is not included in this. And it just seems like so much of the work that went into that plan and into the efforts after that we worked with Lauren Premiano on should be taken into account. So I'm wondering where that is, and I see it on your complementary plans. Thank you very much.
Depending on our part, right? You're right, Jackie. It is a core plan for that implements the economic prosperity and sustainability for the state. So we will add it to the slide for any future briefings. Thank you for that. Okay, next one. Well, we wanted to give you an idea of, the 13 state functional plans that have been prepared originally. These originally had to be adopted by the legislature, and that's quite a. So In fact, it probably wore out the departments that were the, subject matter experts for these. So many of them didn't redo that process, but some of them did. And you'll see education has its own, and housing is the most recent one to be redone. And that is, I think, very appropriate given how critical that is to families' well-being. Go ahead, next slide. Okay, here's where the counties get to shine. And you can see that in implementation of part 2, all 4 counties done an amazing job of creating their general plans, their community development plans. Go ahead, next slide. And as Jackie pointed out, there are other plans, especially if the Department of Planning has its own general plan, island plans, regional plans, program plans, a special area. There are hazard mitigation plans, probably a part of their network program with IFEMA and the other groups. And then we also have a Oahu Regional Transportation Plan that sets, as Jackie and Hoover noted, a critical plan. Go ahead, next slide. I think this is where Leo gets to, hey, you get to hear his voice.
Thanks to all of you for inviting me. As Mary Alice noted, the former director before Mary Alice of the Office of Planning. It was just Office of Planning back then. The name change hasn't taken place, but in about 2019, I left the office to head to the Public Utilities Commission, and currently the chair of the PUC. So, but glad to be back. I am a planner by training and by profession, and I'll say a kind of context on how we even got to a phase 1. 2017 session, we actually tried to get through a comprehensive review. So all phases of it through the legislature. 11th hour didn't make it. So I did what any other resourceful state employee would do, right? End of fiscal year, had some money lying around. And my champion at the ledge at that time was Senator Inouye. She was part of the original policy council. And so when I talked to her, right, she was the one trying to get us the money, trying to get the bill through, didn't get it through. But then in talking to her, I said, what if we at least do a phase 1 and then come back, right? Come back the next year to show what else needs to be done. And then hopefully we can get additional funding then. And so with $50,000 lying around, had to be used up, we engaged SSFM in the summer of 2017 to embark on a phase one of this project of a comprehensive review. Next slide. So as Mary Alice noted, right, there's 13 functional plans, and you can see the years that they were created, right, as late as 1991. But the originals were back in 1989, right after the 86 update. That's pretty much the last time they were comprehensively reviewed. And then they took, right, I like to call it that it was more decentralized to the different agencies, right? And you see some of the updated plans at that time, and when they were created, right? So to agencies' credit, right, they started to also look at the planning. It wasn't that more comprehensive view that the Office of Planning had once, but then, right, they did do planning. Some of it was mandated by the legislature, right? So it kind of evolved, I'll say that, as far as the functional plans. Next slide. And then some of the new plans, right, that didn't have a related functional plan. So you see for climate change and some the coastal resources, wildlife, even water, biosecurity, invasive species, emergency preparedness, all topics that were not around back in the 1980s and 90s, but came to the forefront around 2016, 2018 timeframe when we were doing this phase 1 study. Next slide. One of the reasons, back when they did the original state plan, and I remember something called the MK projections, which was a population projection, right? Which took us through 2005. And so you can see the dotted green line, that was the estimated. But since 2005, you can see, the pretty much increase in the slope, right? It kept going. We kept growing as a state. And so this is one of the reasons why we think, right, we haven't kept up with the planning and some of the issues behind, right, trying to keep up with this kind of population growth. Next slide. So you see here, right, in the 1980s, those were the primary economic activities in the state. Of course, visitor industry, federal expenditures, and sugar was still kind, pineapple was still king, right? Agricultural manufacturing. But then you look at 2018, this is, I guess, the latest data that we have, right, where the top industries are. It's government, it's real estate, right? I guess accommodation and food services, you could kind of lump that as part of the visitor industry, but healthcare and then retail trade, right? So very, very different periods of time that we're in now that we need to, hopefully that you folks can kind of chart the way forward to try to take care of, some of the up and coming issues, but also, right, taking into account what are top industries, what is the population looking like, going forward. Next slide. So when we did the plan, this phase 1 report, what we really wanted to do was, how the current plan was being used, how the current state plan was being used, how did it align with current emerging issues across the state, and then how effectively was it addressing local needs for our residents, and then try to provide, the direction and the future of the state. Next slide. So the approach we took was very simple. We just went around and asked, right? Because of the decentralized nature of planning at the time, right? We basically went to every agency, or SSFM did, and said, what's your inventory of current plans? What are you also working on at that time, so that we could at least document, who's doing what in terms of planning for the state of Hawaii. And so you see here some of the questions that we asked, how did they adopt the plans, right? Kind of describe how it uses the state plan or how an agency uses it. At that time, we saw varying even knowledge of the state planning end. I remember being in a cabinet meeting talking about this with the cabinet, and this is during Governor Ige's first term. And I was surprised that, at that time, the CIO was Doug Murdoch. Doug Murdoch knew about the Hawaii state plan. I don't know where, but he totally understood it. Of all the people in that room, right? But also in the room were some people who remember, like, the education plan. The superintendent at the time was Kathy Matayoshi. She remembered, right, some of the original education work. But then there are a great number of cabinet members that didn't even know their agency had a functional plan, right? But it did lead to, at that time, I remember to one of the key things, and Mary Alice alluded to it, affordable housing was a key item that administration was trying to tackle, right? And if you recall back then, or if you were around back then, right, Governor Ige had his plan for right, 50,000 new affordable units by X date. So one of the first plans that we looked at was the housing functional plan. And surprisingly on that too, there was a planner at HHFDC who is now retired, Janice Takahashi, that actually on her own updated their plan. Right, so through the year, she just did it, right, kept it up. And when we went to try to, go through the process to actually update it, right, which in chapter 226 says that the governor needs to agree or kind of sign off on the plan. Right, that was half the battle already, right, because the agency already updated that plan going forward. So next slide. So just the organization of the report, so it includes an inventory, review and status of all state department plans at the time. Kind of review of the common themes and some findings and recommendations, some of which is leading to your task force today. On this slide, you start to see some of the common policy and interconnectivity issues. And I would like to point out that, the first bullet, right, almost no policies, right? The study found that almost no policies are shared by one or more of the plans, right? So they were very individual, very focused on what the agency was doing at the time, what issues they were tackling at the time, which kind of led to what kind of planning they were going to do versus this more comprehensive view, where, like we know today, right? A lot of this is shared, right? It's broken up into different agencies to do. So, but that was one thing that we saw in the plans that were available at the time. And you see here, some kind of like the policy, like I said, right? Most of them had, we're really looking at issues directly involved with the agency that it lied under, right? Probably the only other thing, right, the interconnectedness with the Hawaii 2050 sustainability plan, that was because the sustainability plan was being updated at the time, right? And so, right, top of mind, everybody's like, okay, right? And actually it was a different division here in the Office of Planning that was doing that update along with the state auditor. So, right, that was just top of mind, right? So you saw a lot of the plans back then say, we better connect up with this because, right, this is another thing that the Office of Planning was doing. Next slide. So some of the findings, like you guys discussed earlier, right? Some of the findings of the original state plan, it remains relevant. I even look at the functional plans from time to time and specifically the energy one, right? And all of the problems back then are still the problems today, right? The issues that we want to tackle today. Maybe they might take a little different form, but when you get to the kind of meat and potatoes of it, it's still the same. So, right? Yes, there was some forethought back then, but then the problem is, what have we done about it? Right? We have all of these great plans. Do we implement them? The functional plans were meant to be the basis for setting priorities of public resources. If you take a look at the old functional plans, they actually had a budget item, a projected budget to implement that particular item that they were trying to address. So that was one unique feature that was part of the original functional plans, that there were some numbers put to it, right? And yes, I think even today, right, you try to put a number on something you're trying to do, yeah, it scares a lot of people. But I think what they tried to do then is really kind of level set and ground, right, what the request was, right? And how much, was it going to really cost the state or whoever to do some of those things. Next slide. More findings, right? Like you guys discussed, right? The 3 goals are still there, 2264. But then, some of these cross-cutting issues, right, that have emerged since 1986 to the time we did the update, phase one, in 2017, 2018. So you see the more modern issues, if you will, that we're dealing with today, right? Those are kind of cropping up. But then again, right, you look at the plans and the functional plans at the time, right? Not a lot of cross-cutting. And you look at these cross-cutting issues, right? I bet every agency or organization here is trying to deal with it. Next. And so part two, the findings of part two of the state plan, right? Of course, the functional plans haven't been kept up to date, right? The agencies likely have a strategic plan or directions in support of their budget. Federal regulatory requirements have changed as well since the original functional plans and even after 1986. And we're trying to deal with some of the federal items like in this administration, right? So if you try to update it now, I guess the word that I would give is try to think beyond the current issues, right? Because by the time you guys get to the point of actually updating the state plan, right, you're talking a year, 2 years, 3 years from now. So you got to kind of have some forethought as well. Yeah, and then, of the 13 functional plans at the time, right, historic preservation was up to date, housing, recreation, and transportation. And that's basically due in part, like, I think historic pres at the time, DOI, right? SHPD was under DOI, so they had to do some planning to show DOI. So that was kind of housing, like I mentioned. Recreation, we've always done an update to the recreation plan that's under DLNR, right? And I think at that time it was being updated, so it was up to date. And transportation, right? That was a period of time of I think Ford was the director, but all of his divisions were really trying to update their plans, right? They had to bring it up to speed. They're trying to get federal money to do it, so you needed to be updated. They couldn't take a plan from 5-6 years prior, right? Because it just didn't make sense. Next time. More findings on part two. Maybe one of the key ones here is that the strategic plans that the department was doing really lack coordinated input. Right, it's kind of like you just did it in their bubble. There may have been some input or some coordination with another agency, but we didn't see a whole lot of that happening. Like I said, in the 2050 plan, sustainability plan, right? Kind of top of mind at the time was kind of like the next thing to think about as far as sustainability, right? That was the buzzword back then, still the buzzword today. So you can see where some of it is reactionary at the time versus, some coordinated, managed, update, right? Over a period of time versus just got to do the plan to do X or to get to X. Next. Part three, which is the priority guidelines. I think we found that you may have to take a look at it. There's what, six priority areas now. And so, maybe the two more modern ones, sustainability and TOD is still top of mind, but you may have to take a look at the former 4 that was originally in there, and either tweak it or bring it up to date, and the like. And then, yeah, I think, the good part about that is, right, others have started the process of looking at the long-term vision. A lot of this, right, you go back to Governor Ariyoshi, right? right? He had the forethought of taking a look at it. I will say Governor Wahe had, the impetus to actually implement some of those things. And so, right, today there's a new wave of people looking at, right, different agencies, different organizations, different commissions. I'll even speak for the PUC, right? Our three commissioners, we just issued what we call inclinations, what we see as the future of public utilities in the state. And we focus on energy, but we're also doing it for, we regulate private water, wastewater systems, right? What do we see for the future for them, water carriers and the like. So it's almost like a white paper, right? So we're trying to look forward to in the next, 5 to 10 years, where do we need to be to get there? So we're doing that kind of planning even at the Public Utilities Commission. Next slide.
Oh, yes.
So that was it. Again, happy to be here. Answer any questions you guys may have. And if I remember what we did 7 years ago, I will say we did it with one planner in my office, and then SSFM, Cheryl Sood and one other person on their team to do that kind of planning in basically a year, right? Because we needed to have it ready for whatever session to go back and try to, get some more funding to do the rest of it. So yeah, that was kind of, again, thank you for inviting me, and I wish all of you the best of luck. It's not an easy thing. It is not an easy thing. I will say, back in 2018 or actually 2017, when we were updating the housing functional plan, we actually went in for legislation and got it passed to make that process easier. Like Mary Alice said, right? The functional plans used to be through the legislature, through the governor, right? Or to the legislature, through the governor. Now it's just at the governor. Governor is the final stop, but, right, use what you have, resources, right? A lot of agencies have boards and commissions over their departments. So if you have a board or you have a commission, right, use them as the sounding block, right? They are, public servants, right, as kind, and use them to kind. These are mainly for the state agencies, right? So for those that don't have, right, create one, create a sounding board advisory group, if you will, to think about, what you're trying to think about in the future, right? And use that process. Then at the end of the day, right, you got to convince the governor that this is going to be the path forward for whatever topic.
Great. Leo, thank you very much. Leo has been here through most of that, and so have I actually. But not in the leadership role that Leo took in trying to initiate a comprehensive update, and now we're finally getting a chance to do that. And thank you to the legislature, Representative Uchiyama, for funding this process. We really appreciate that. Okay, short break. Keys to the restrooms are over there hanging on the hooks, blue for boys, orange for women. And there's treats over there, a little bit of, sugar to kind of, the energy levels up. And we're gonna come back and then look at what the update process is going to cost and what your role will do. And we will take comments from the public, because this is a sunshine meeting, so I want to make sure if I forget, please be on either side of here. Okay, we got you. Okay, good. And let's take a break.
I buy it.
Ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we are going to reconvene our state plan update task force meeting. And we are going to try, we will finish by 3. And we're going to move on to the next, we're still in, on the agenda, number 3, presentation. And the next section is Lauren Trimiano. Lauren is the, special plans manager of strategic initiatives, and this is definitely one of those. So Lauren, go ahead.
Thank you.
Speak loud.
Okay, I will use my outside voice. Good afternoon, everybody. You can go to the next slide. So Act 36 was enacted in the 2024 session. And you know, this was enacted to really pick up from where the phase 1 report left off. The bill established this body, this task force, which will sunset in June 30th in 2027. It also established a project coordinator position and appropriated FY25 funds for the position, as well as some initial operating expenses. And so with these initial resources, as well as the findings and recommendations from the phase 1 report, the task force is really well positioned to go into and get started on this phase 2 update process. And the goal of revising, the goal of the phase 2 update process is to revise the chapter 226 of Hawaiʻi State Planning Act, really to catch it up with current times, current priorities, as well as public sentiment. And you know, just to kind of quickly put this into perspective, the last time that this was comprehensively updated was before Claire and I were born. So, and a whole generation of people. So, you know, we think it's about time for the update, and are thankful to Leo and his team for getting this started with phase 1. Next slide, please. So under the act, the task force is going to develop a 2-year work plan, and that's going to examine chapter 226 and develop findings, recommendations, measurable benchmarks to track progress. The work plan needs to outline how the task force will facilitate alignment and implementation of state and county plans under chapter 226. And it also needs to take into consideration equity concerns throughout the entire process. So in short, the work plan is meant to be a roadmap to ensure that both the update process and the update itself are coordinated, actionable, and inclusive. Specifically, the task force will assess what still holds true from the State Planning Act and consider what may need to be updated again to reflect current times and public sentiment. And this includes testing the relevancy and consistency of the values reflected in the theme of Part 1 of the Hawaiʻi State Planning Act with public sentiment. The task force will also propose reformulated and streamlined goals, objectives, and policies under Part 1 in a manner that's consistent with public sentiment, but also with state and county aspirations. Part 2, which again is that implementation mechanism for the Planning Act, will also be reviewed by the task force. And the emphasis on that is really going to be to take a look at reestablishing the functional plans to improve not only compliance, but also utility, and again, coordination of state and county implementation of those plans. So in sum, the task force will evaluate essentially what's working in the Hawaiʻi State Planning Act, what's not working, and formulate some recommendations to modernize and improve that. Next slide, please. Oh, deliverables. Sorry, you could go back. You're right. So the task force is going to be responsible for preparing 2 annual reports, one before the 26th and one before the 27th legislative sessions. And the annual reports will describe the task force's progress, completed actions, and any findings and recommendations, including proposed legislation. There's also a final report to describe how this task force is addressing the findings and recommendations from part 1 through this phase 1 through this phase 2 update process. And don't worry, you're not alone. In addition to bringing Claire on as our full-time coordinator to support this task force, our OPSD Special Plans branch will also be supporting, providing technical and administrative support to the task force. We're small but mighty, a team of 5. It includes Claire and myself, and our colleagues, David Kobayashi, a senior analyst, Scott Allen, who's in the room here, a planning research and design specialist, and Lena Lariosa, who's a project support specialist. So, our role again is going to be supporting on the administrative and sort of technical, aspects of this effort. And some of the things that we'll work on will be things like preparing the draft work plan for the task force's review and approval, and working with the task force on designing the process and overall approach. We'll also procure contractual services and collaborate with vendors to execute the task force's work plan. We'll work on conducting some planning, research, and analyzing findings to inform the task force's deliberations. We'll work with the task force on formulating policy recommendations based on some of that research. And of course, work with you folks on preparing the deliverables as mentioned on the previous slide. Claire is great, in providing and preparing all of the board materials. We're so thankful for her, and also make sure that we'll make that accessible to the public. And so with that, I will gladly hand it over to Claire to talk about our phase 2 milestones and next steps.
So I'll be covering our milestones and next steps. Oh, sure. The next slide. So far, OPSD hired a project coordinator this past January, which is me. And then we officially kicked off our first task force meeting today. And we secured funding for the project for fiscal year 2026, in addition to the funding originally appropriated under Act 36 in 2025. And we're in the process of engaging with the University of Hawaiʻi to support the project. And in terms of the upcoming tasks, in the coming months, we'll be beginning stakeholder interviews. We'll develop a work plan for the task force to review, prepare scopes of work for the technical studies, and begin strategizing for the project's public outreach efforts. And similar to the state plan development process, and based on the phase 1 update report recommendations, OPSD will facilitate the completion of the following sub-projects in the next, for their review for the next 2 years. So that includes technical studies, stakeholder interviews, generational workshops, polls, subgroup meetings, issues papers, and community conferences. And in this process, we'll be collecting data on different aspects of the state and on public opinion, which will help with developing the 2 final legislative reports. And OPSD will be working with the University of Hawaiʻi to help complete the stakeholder interviews. And these interviews will help aid the development of the scope of the technical studies. And in preparation for the next meeting, we recommend that the task force reviews the State Planning Act, Act 36, and the phase 1 report to help inform our next meeting, which we're aiming to take place in fall of 2025. And then reviewing these things will help with our future work plan discussion. And during our work plan discussion, we'll be going more in depth on various sub-projects that will be completed, what the project timeline will look like, and other aspects of project planning. And to close our presentation, we wanted to share a little bit about the design elements that were featured in the presentation. The visual concept and the graphics were developed by our very talented special plans branch colleague, Lena Lariosa. She drew the inspiration from the following map contours featured in the original state plan booklet, and it's shown in the image on the screen. These lines are an ode to the origins of the Hawaii state plan and the Hawaii's natural occurrence, topography, and interconnectedness. These contours reflected in the imagery move and shift just as the state plan intended to evolve over time through coordination, connection, and continual refinement. And thank you all for coming to today's meeting. Materials for the meeting can be found on the OPSD website, and then feel free to contact me if you have any questions, and then I'm gonna pass over to Mary Alice for more questions.
Claire, thank you, Lauren. Okay, on our agenda, we're now at item 4. Questions and answers about phase 2, and nobody speaks up, I'm gonna call them. So, let's start with, our members on Zoom. If you're still with us, are there any? Okay, start with Stacy. Go ahead, Stacy.
What was the question, Mary Alice? It's a little hard to hear.
Can you repeat that, Stacy? Yes, the question. I can't hear you. Oh, I'm so sorry. No, Stacy, we're now at item number 4 on our agenda, questions and answers about phase 2. And I wanted to give the members an opportunity to ask questions first or comments. Comments are welcome. And then we'll move to ask if there are any comments from members of the general public. But
No questions. Thank you.
Jackie Hoover, I think I see your hand up. No?
Oh, no, Mary Alice, I'm comfortable with everything and looking forward to working with the team on this. Mahalo.
Great, all right. Any other comments or questions from our members on Zoom? You standing, hands up? No, okay. Moving to members in the room. Yes, Representative Chiang.
I'm sorry if you covered this earlier. But I was wondering what's gonna be the meetings of these task force meetings? Going forward?
We're thinking about once a quarter. We have the luxury of that because the final report isn't due, in 5 months. So, we're very aware of, how busy our members are and didn't want to have meetings when we didn't have substantive stuff to present to them for their reviewing decisions. Fine, I'm sure you have a question or a comment. Ken does. Okay, Ken does go first.
Sorry, I just had a question. Is the membership of this group already sort of set? Like, you can't add, and the only reason I'm not trying to grow this, I know it's already a large group, but and I do see a lot of food themes popping up both in the findings of part 1 of the state plan as well as in the Hawaii State 2050 plan, but I don't see like the Department of Agriculture or even ADC or one of the groups that are sort of a state level food advocate. So I'm wondering, is it possible to add them, or was there any thought to add them and they declined, or I'm not sure.
Does Act 36 allow the chair to invite? Yes, so we can add an advocate for sustainable food systems, and I will undertake to do that, Ken. Thank you very much for that suggestion. Appreciate it. Any other lesson?
I do, and it's kind of a follow on from what Jackie Hoover said. And I have Jackie kinda sitting next to us. So community engagement is absolutely critical to have any authenticity in any planning process. But there has been a lot of community engagement in various planning initiatives, as you well know, including the SES, which Jackie Hoover mentioned, and from my island, all the recovery planning, engaging our Lahaina survivors, et cetera, has been a very comprehensive. So how do we, I'm interested in what the community, and maybe that comes later, because it's the fourth bullet here on the slide. I think we have to be really respectful of engaging community in respecting prior commentary that's been done, prior offerings of ideas, so that people don't feel like they're coming back to the table to say the same thing again. And also, so referencing, like you're asking us, is it still valid? That kind of thing. I think that will go a long way to say this was said in this state or whatever, not all the way back to 1978, but in recent times, for us, it's post wildfires, right? We had to re-authenticate our sets, our 2020, which was published in November 2022 before the August 23 wildfires, to make sure those economic ideas were still valuable post the tragedy. So I think something like that would be really good, again, to make people want to go back to the table again, or whatever methodology you use for community engagement, to feel that my voice has been heard in the past. This is an opportunity to update, and it will be meaningful. Does that make sense?
It does, thank you.
Just because, I'm from a community that's had a lot of community engagement, a lot of charity.
That's right, and I think that's absolutely true. Don't wanna ask people who've already provided thoughts on it. And we will include the sets and incorporated in possibly as a functional plan, but it has its own.
And it's like different, yeah,
Federal.
we understand. We totally get that, and we hope that there will still be a federal agency interested in it. I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. But anyway, and it's not necessarily not to re-invite people, it's just to validate that they have, in fact, because some of those people are most knowledgeable and engaged, so just with the acknowledgement that we know you have contributed in the past to this, whatever this planning initiative was, and tell them why it differs or why it needs updating or something. So make it feel like what they did before was not discounted or discarded, and it's just a re-engagement.
Thank you. Other comments? There's been hoping and trying and waiting.
No, I'm looking forward to the task force getting together. I guess the question or concern that I would raise, and this is how it gets on. I realize we're sunshine meeting, so not speak my mind, speak my mind. When I hear things like, oh, we're gonna go in and set probably plan to go through the whole process. And of course, it has to be a plan for all, and we have to be inclusive. But oftentimes in the planning process, inclusive means sacrificing genuine policy at the mantle of inclusivity. And more, just as one example, right now with boots on the ground programs and policies being tried to put into play, right now, right, like for Kauai over the past few years, we've had a very small group, if not just one individual, using environmental law to gum up major projects that have to do with climate initiatives or have to do with housing for locals. Not a problem. You're gonna use environmental law to gum up resort development, coastal development. By all means, use it. But using it to actually go in one situation of vendetta against the landlord. Being able to use environmental law for those purposes and use it effectively. And looking at what this task force is going to be tasked with doing, I get it, it has to be a broad plan, it has to be approached statewide, but getting genuine proposals at the table that will have meaningful effects and help implement the changes needed to respond to many things we're facing. I'm concerned about like making sure this whole notion of, well, we have to hear everybody's voices are equal, and we need to bring them all in, and we need to give everybody a safe space, and each voices heard. That's my genuine concern going into the process. So just place it before we start.
Yeah.
That's a hard act to follow. I'm looking forward to that. I've been on a few task forces over the years. I would say that in my experience, with task force in the past. It's very, it's like you're limited to what the task force is assigned to be. It's not meant to be open for a ton of people to join in and participate. It's very limited to the members of the task force. So, and I believe there's a purpose for that, right? So that we can be directed. We have this task, we have to follow these guidelines and, you know, requirements that we need to do. That's all I would say. I agree. You know, we have similar situations occurring on Margaret, but in regards to this, as I mentioned earlier, the state plan is very important and it drives all of our other plans. And so we want to make sure that that is solid and gives us direction for all of our other plans. And right now, I think there's areas we could beef up and really identify the importance of these plans in making decisions for our state and for our counties. Because like I said, it's pretty frustrating to go to whatever meeting it may be, council, commission, even just in daily discussions with people and things. And the plans are not put where they should be. They're like a side thought, like that may be important to somebody else or something else. It really, if we're gonna be planning to go this way, we need to make sure we're following the plan. Because if we don't follow the plan, why do we have a plan? Right? So that's kind of the basic sort of thing. But again, anytime we can make things better as far as giving us guidance on maybe.
I'm glad to hear both of you as voices of the town. Now that we do, and now that I'm hearing Dima, who represents the third county.
Yeah. Well, I just have a couple questions, to be honest. So if I heard right, the whole process is like 2 years. About 2 years. And then on the community engagement part, maybe that gets fleshed out later, but do we know like how we're gonna put that into it? That's something that we bring in.
That'll be a great discussion for the next meeting.
Great answer.
Alright.
So, to you.
Okay.
And the full county.
That's me. So I'm probably the newest one to this world, so I don't have a lot to say at this moment, except for to say that I think this is an important effort that we're taking on together, and I'm excited to be a part of it. I will also say, like, I think there are different roles, the different types of plans that we've talked about. There are different roles for each of those plans. And my interest, and probably where my head is gonna be at, because I'm constantly in this place, is making sure this plan is doing what it's supposed to do and not going beyond what it's supposed to do or doing less than it's supposed to do. So that's where my head is gonna be at, along with the community engagement, because I agree with my colleague from Maui. We've been to, I know because I've led some of this community engagement, we're a little engaged right now, like a little over engaged. And so, you know, I want meaningful community engagement that is not too much, that meets people where they are and doesn't, I agree with what my colleague in Hawaii says, that like, we're not gonna meet everyone where we're not gonna be able to do everything for everybody with this plan. We have to stay in our lane and figure out exactly what the plan needs to be and do that. And that's our plan. So happy to be part of it. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
My colleague, Don Shea, who has a Kuleana for public trust assets and a lot of the land is under the, you know, just sort of a small kind of land, but I mean, and water.
Yeah, and water, so,
Yeah.
and forget. So I am really,
I am excited to be part of this. I think, sort of hearing from Leo, some of the things, what worked and some of the findings. I mean, in my mind, the plan needs to be relevant. And I think in order for it to be implementable, people need to feel a sense of participation. They do need to feel like their voices are heard. And I would tell you, sitting at DLNR, 2 weeks ago, I had the PTA EIS, you know, so we cannot do what everybody wants us to do. But I think what we can do is find different methodologies of this. So I'm looking forward to seeing what our approaches are. I mean, I'd love to see a dashboard or a website on that permits people to make comments. So we've got live time. This is the status. These are the issues. Because not everybody feels comfortable participating in a public meeting, and not all voices are necessarily reflective of all concerns at a public meeting. But that, to me, that becomes our burden. Are we creating a platform for those different voices to participate in ways that they feel the most comfortable? And I think all of us bring sort of that experience in our own different kuleanas. So I'm hoping, because coming from wearing my legal hat as a lawyer, you either pay in the front end or you pay in the back end. And we all know the back end is it's expensive. It's many times it's litigation, it's delays. So, I think that is our challenge, is finding, because I would agree with you, community engagement is a critical component to the success of anything now, because people are not afraid to litigate. We also know that the Supreme Court is willing to listen, and they have been very sympathetic to the voices of the group. So I think it's incumbent upon us that the plan be reflective of sort of a transitional, there's a changing dynamics. I think Oha mentioned, Stacy mentioned the diaspora. I mean, people are leaving. And so I think we do have to take into considerations why they're leaving, but how do we continue to keep them engaged because they may return. So I think that there are a lot of different components about this plan, and our challenge is, how do we bring all those perspectives to make the plan something that can withstand the test of time? As Mary Alice said, our kuleana is public trust, not only for today's generations, but future generations. So I always think about, Hawaiians think it's 7 generations in the back, 7 generations forward, that I do think we have to take into consideration that kind of a transition from uncertainty. There's tremendous uncertainty, whether it's the federal government or whether it's our own uncertainty, depending upon climate change and different considerations. So I think, I'm hoping the plan can be developed flexible enough that we can pivot should there be changing circumstances. But I do think we have the right people sitting in the room here who reflect all of the different, various stakeholder interests. So I am looking forward to seeing how staff is going to come to us with these great work plans for us to consider. But I think we've got a road ahead of us, but I think it's one worthy, and the time is appropriate now to move forward. One last point. I think what I have found missing in a lot of the previous plans that will continue to percolate if we don't address them in a constructive way is cultural considerations. And so I do think that we have to create we have to acknowledge that and find ways to incorporate that and integrate that in the city.
That's it. Thank you. So Chris, representing the Climate Change Commission,
Yeah, I mean, also different hats here, so I'll try and pick the current hat that's on the name tag here. But you know, it sounds like it's been a long time since the original effort, but not too long that we still have historical perspectives to help guide us, teach us about what they went through, some of the lessons they learned that can help us to apply our kuleana for this next effort. And it's also good to see that we've got legislative support. So hopefully we can I'm sure we can come up to this moment and provide for them, and then there will be more opportunities moving forward. So definitely looking forward to the next steps.
Thanks, Chris. Jackie Kind.
I think I would echo what a lot of folks said over there, and especially when it comes to community engagement. I'm very interested in the how are we gonna tackle that? And I think another thing that stands out for me is implementation. So we do a fantastic job at, writing all of these plans, but we always fall short when it comes to implementation. And so like really at the county levels, how and who and how do we keep it funded and how do we keep it going is really important, and to really plan those updates as well, right? We can implement WAVE for a year, but things change, right? So those are the two things I think that's a whole to me.
Thank you, Jean. Leslie, any further?
No, no further comments. I'm
Okay.
very impressed with everyone else's comments.
So listening to it, the main thing that I want to bring up is that, so we're talking about the plan being flexible. The way I would describe it is I would like this plan to be resilient, that this plan is still something that's even a functional document in 10, 20, 30 years time, right? This plan might end up sticking around for 30 years like the last one.
That was
So-
30 years.
Or 40 years. The way that I see is sort of the main purpose of the plan is really about having good, strong monitoring and governance of all of the underlying sort of planning decisions that are then made. It's not that our plan is to be something that's prescriptive, but something that allows any sort of decisions and so on that are made underneath to be monitored, and if they're working in the way that they should, then they can keep going. But if they're not working in the way that they go, that they're then functional things that can be done to address issues. Right. So if things aren't going quite right, is it because either we've had the wrong sort of initiatives to create whatever that thing is, or are we measuring the wrong thing and we need to change the measure, or any number of different things, or do you even can that initiative and try something different, right? So those sort of overlying principles about how underlying planning decisions are made and monitored and then adapted or even abandoned. That's sort of, I think, what needs to come to this sort of overarching kind of state plan. Right? So that's my general view of that. Regarding our task force work, I did have a question around all of these phase 2 kind of sub projects. I wonder, and you may have this already, so it's more a question rather than a statement, but I wonder if there is also an earlier stage to sort of figure out, that we as a group figure out sort of a set of principles about the types of work that needs to be done, the types of issue papers or technical studies that are going to be done. Whether these focus on very specific issues like looking at, say, food systems or education or sense of federal funding or government, or if they're more principle basis, what does it mean to be good planning governance? And so those would be the types of questions that I think we really need to think about before these studies are done, rather than being questions that come up later.
Thank you. Okay, education.
I was just gonna, just real quickly, I'm just coming from seeing Act 100 and I was doing I think the reports for that, and it sometimes feels like, I hate to be blunt, but sort of check the box, because we also have other plans that we seem to follow as well, right? So I think as we do this, to keep in mind that, for example, the Department of Education has a strategic plan, and so how does that fit in as part of this functional plan? Can that stand alone? Can that, and I'm not a planner, so this is where I would defer to all the bigger brains here, but how does so when I was looking at slide 31, right, how do these different new plans that we're calling it fit into the functional plans, and how, and are we asking different departments or agencies to do double work in following a state plan, and then we're having our own board plan or department plan, and so just trying to cut back on the multiple sort of plans that seem to we get caught up in sometimes. So just, I think keeping that in mind, I don't know how to fix that or what, but I think part of the reason maybe this wasn't touched in 40 years is because each department starts doing their own plans, and that seems to be the driving guide for our departments, rather than something that seems to lose meaning over the years. And so kind of that resilience piece, or how we're going to make it continue to stay relevant is.
Yes, sir. Can I just respond to that?
Yeah.
So I think the way I see it, the way I was trying to describe it, it's not that this plan should be duplicating any low level plans. It's really that this is about guiding those lower level plans. It's the set of principles and governance that those lower level plans should be abiding by in order to be good, effective plans. And if current plans meet that standard that we come up with, then that's great. And if they don't, then that can also be the allocation and adjustment that those departments make.
Leo.
I was gonna comment on that. I think, what we found back then, was these newer plans did replace, right, the functional plan. But, right, the thing about the functional plans, they're in statutes, right? They're part of 226. So, it could very well be that the more current plan that DOE has is actually the educational functional plan. But it might need to be supplemented as you look at the former functional plan and what they were trying to achieve, going back to 226, right, part 1, right? Are you doing that in your plans, or do you actually have, you might have separate plans, right, for the different components? So that's what we're trying to strive for in phase 1, just get this inventory of what's out there, right? And basically the recommendation would be to this task force now would be, right, taking a look at how do you fill in the blanks, if there are blanks, or what do you do, right? Has it changed greatly from, right, the original functional plans? So I thought, and like I said, I mean, if you take a look at your current plan, and it pretty much looks like the old functional plan, that's what I would take to the governor. Oh, this is the path forward for DOE, right? And that then, right, kind of gets to this resiliency part, right? It carries on because it's not meant to be for, say, administration, right? Because we know it's gonna take a while to do all of the things in there. So what you want it to do is, right, kind of set the foundation, like say for the next administration, the next superintendent, right? They take a look at this former plan and go, right, how can I build upon it, right? What haven't we done, etc. Unless they want to strive to create a new plan, then that's at, you know, the agency's time. So, like I said, it's not going to be easy, but I think there's a path forward. You just have to kind of creatively think about how, right? Because, like Steven said, you're not trying to take over or replace something, right, with, say, the old functional plan. It's like work with what you got now, right, and according to time. Because remember too, you folks are also looking at any changes to 226 overall, right? So you might find yourself in that situation as you start to forget all of these things, like, you know, that part is just, right, too old or kind, it's not modern enough, etc., not covering, right, current issues, that you need something else. And then from there, if that passes, right, go back into the plan and go, are we doing X?
Like I said, like to make a comment on Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom who wants to chime in? Representative White, your thoughts? Well, let's see, how long did it? Hey. On time. Wait, Roland has the comment.
I just want to acknowledge the comment in the chat from Jackie Hoover. Is it possible to engage students such as middle, high, college in the process with specific focus group opportunities? So I just wanted to verbally share that.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. We will incorporate that into our thank you group. Well, I want to thank everyone. But unless there are further comments, I want to be respectful of people's time. And so we will reconvene in the fall. And we'll have stuff for you to review and consider. And thank you all. Really appreciate it.
Oh, no. It's even more.
Yeah. Oh, oh, man.